Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm excited to interview Emma Yang, who is a 15-year-old student based out of New York City. Her story is really fascinating and also really close to my heart because I actually worked with her when she first started learning coding back when she was 8 years old. Fast forward a few years, she's now creating her own artificial intelligence startup to help Alzheimer's patients. Let's hear about her story. Hi Emma. Welcome to this interview, and thank you so much for coming on our series. Before we get started, can you introduce yourself? And I would love to learn more about you.
Sure, and thank you so much for having me. So my name is Emma. I'm a junior in high school here in New York City. I was originally actually born in Hong Kong. I lived there until I was around 10 years old, and moved here with my family to New York City. When I was actually started coding when I was in Hong Kong. I went to the first Code Academy when I was 9 years old, and it was my first experience developing apps. And so that was really, a great kickstarting experience for me. And since then, I am now the founder of Timeless, which is a startup and a mobile app that helps to empower Alzheimer's patients in their daily lives.
That's amazing. And right now you're 15 years old and you're creating this company. And what inspired you to start this company, Timeless? And tell me about this journey so far.
Yeah, so when I was around 7 or 8 years old, my grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And when that happened, my family was kind of looking for ways that we could help her cope. So we set up like a whiteboard in her living room to kind of write down important information. We gave her an iPad to share photos with her. But we wanted to also look for a mobile app to see if there was a way to solve this problem and to help her stay connected with us. And we were really surprised because we actually found that there wasn't anything that existed out there. So around that time, I just learned how to code for iOS apps. And so I wanted to use my passion for computer science to create something that could help people like my grandmother.
Amazing. Love to dive deeper into your journey with Timeless. And let me segue a little bit about on your journey as a coder. This is not your first project, Timeless. You also won awards in international app development challenges. And can you share more about, other projects you've created before Timeless?
Sure. So I think about a couple of months after I came to the US, I entered the Technovation Challenge with a friend. It's a all-girls technology entrepreneurship challenge that encourages us to kind of get into STEM and think about, how do you use technology, specifically mobile app technology, to solve a problem that's in your community. And for that, we had to create an app, a fully working prototype, but then also create a business plan for it. And for that, I created an app called Concussion Checker, which allowed, I think, athletes and coaches to, check for concussion. We took a lot of these tests that we had online already that were existing and put them into this app so that it was easier for these athletes and coaches to check if someone had a concussion. We entered into that competition and we won the second place globally. We were so fortunate. And I think the most meaningful thing out of that was that I met all of these women and girls who were also passionate about using computer science to do something for social good. Because I think before then, my lens for computer science was mostly about, computer science for the sake of computer science. And it was fun for me in that aspect, but it really opened my eyes to, what you can do with computer science, the impact you can create with that.
Right. So you kind of move from like tinkering with your own projects to creating real life applications with real users that can be impacted from your application, from your development. And you mentioned a bit about girls in technology. The highlight of that part, what was your takeaway in like being a girl, being a coder? There's not a lot of girls who are coding. What's your thought process behind that?
Yeah, I think, when I first started coding, I wasn't really aware of this problem because I started coding kind of in my own exploration, and I didn't really think that being a girl would really impact that. It wasn't really until I became aware of things like technovation that was specifically trying to lift up girls in the field and encourage girls to pursue careers in technology. And when I actually went to an iOS class myself, it was a high school iOS class, and I realized that there was this divide. When I went to technovation, it was all these girls who were really passionate and really, driven to um, create the best pitches and create the best apps and to just be really good at what they were good at. And it wasn't until I realized that there is this issue of there aren't enough girls who are participating in technology, who are pursuing technology. And that can cause a lot of problems in terms of diversity, I think. And it's something that has definitely improved a lot over the years that I've been kind of involved with technology. But I think it's something that we still have to remain aware of. And I think, it's very much a cultural issue, I think. A lot of the time it's about, boys saying, I've never met a girl who could do computer science before, like who could talk about computer science or was passionate about computer science, or who, was pursuing something or could even do something like technology or math or computer science in general. So I think there really has to be more awareness across the board, not only with girls pursuing technology, but with everyone else, being aware that, gender should not be a factor in determining whether or not you can pursue this field. It should be open to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I share a similar experience as you as a woman in technology, where technology is like everyone's tool, right? So there's no reason for gender to be something that change what we do in technology or what we're capable of. So really
Right.
excited to see you actively participating in, getting more girls in coding. And so I want to zoom back further in history. So you started coding when you were 6 years old. So almost 10 years now of coding experience. As First Code teaches kids to code. And, can you, if you remember, what was your first programming language? What was your first project?
Yeah, I think my first, experience with coding was with Scratch. I think my dad had found it online. He introduced it to me. And I kind of started playing around with, bouncing things off of the screen and, creating loops and little animations. I think at First Code, I did we did a couple of projects through like App Inventor tutorials. And so I think those were my earliest experiences with coding, kind of playing around really explorationally and thinking about what are the possibilities with coding. And I think that really contributed to the more creative aspect that I associate with computer science. That it was really about, trial and error and see, what works, what doesn't, and learning from that and kind of, working my way through it.
Yeah, and you really came a long way from, building the Scratch projects, like bouncing balls like around the screen, to now creating an AI company, which I think really highlights to us that, the first project doesn't have to be, grandeur or like very impressive, but more like we build and learn from each project and become better over time. And so coming back to current, like the now, right? And so right now, when did you start Timeless? And walk me through like the history of Timeless.
Yeah, I think I started Timeless around maybe 3 years ago now. I was around 12 years old. I started by creating a very kind of small, basic prototype of the app to enter into a scholarship, I think. And I won, I think, $2,500 from that scholarship here in New York City to kind of start building that out, to take formal classes in iOS programming and to kind of build an even larger prototype. And it was from there that I started reaching out to CTOs, UI UX designers, developers, medical doctors to kind of seek advice about, I'm a 12-year-old girl trying to create an app for Alzheimer's patients. Like, will you help me? It was definitely a lot of cold emailing people that I found online. But from that, I was able to build, a really instrumental, integral team to the Timeless's journey in terms of giving me the advice and the mentorship I needed. And I think through there, I created a larger working prototype, And then I started kind of pitching first to some VCs that were kind of female focused and female driven. And then after that to pitch competitions on a wider scale. And it was from the Women Who Tech pitch competition, Emerging Tech Challenge, that I won the $50,000 to really create Timeless as a working product on the market and to create the startup Timeless. So it's definitely been a really amazing learning journey for me because I was completely new to this. This was the first really app that I coded from scratch in iOS. And it's grown into something that, I never could imagine it could have gotten, as far as it's gotten right now.
That's amazing. And so currently, how many people are working on this company with you? And you mentioned about CTO and designers. Like, how does your team look like?
Yeah, so I have been working. I kind of developed the foundation of the app, and then I've been collaborating with a developer, which was kind of the main thing that I was raising funds for, who collaborates with me on the actual coding development process. I also have a UI UX designer. She was originally based in Texas, and she helped on a pro bono basis, which was amazing, to kind of enhance the design of the app and to work with me to make it as intuitive and easy to use as possible. And she's continuing to provide a lot of support to this day. And then the technology, I guess, partner of Timeless is Kairos, which was a startup based in Miami, and I was connected to the CTO there. And he gave me a lot of more advice on the development side of things. How do you create a structure that is the most stable and the most scalable, and how do you manage this and that? And so really guiding me through this process.
Amazing. That's fascinating. Love to dive deeper into the technical stack of Timeless. Can you walk us through what are the technologies that you're using, the language, any framework? That would be really inspiring for our audience.
Yeah, so I started kind of developing the UI part of Timeless on Sketch, and I prototyped it in tools like Flinto and InVision. And I have coded the app in Swift on Xcode. I'm using a weather API to power the kind of the calendar today side of the app, and I'm using the Kairos facial recognition technology for the machine learning AI part of the app.
Amazing. And so, like, apart from collaborating with the CTO, how did you pick up? I'm sure, like, a lot of these technologies are new to you when you first started creating Timeless. How did you pick up these new technologies, new coding language frameworks?
Yeah, I think not only is it kind of picking up kind of tools, but I think it's also been a process of learning how to research and finding the correct information I need to learn all these new technologies. It's been a lot of Googling around, figuring out, looking at examples and demo code, and looking at how do I really use how do I develop something and design something in Sketch, and how do I kind of create something I can actually play around with on Flinto or InVision. So it's definitely it's a process of figuring out how to find the information and learning from what you see online. I think so much is available online now to teach from a very beginning level how you can develop an app from scratch, and I think that's been really helpful for me. Kind of going through those resources and trying to learn as much as possible from that.
That's great. And it's really a lot of Googling, a lot of Stack Overflow, and
Yeah.
like reading quickly is definitely a key skill as a programmer. And what were some unexpected things that you have discovered since you've started building Timeless?
Yeah, I think one of the most unexpected thing would be kind of the contrast between how large the problem is. There's millions of people suffering from Alzheimer's right now, and how surprised people could seem when I would say, "Oh, I created an app for Alzheimer's patients," and they say, "Wow, I've never heard of that before." And I think there is a disconnect that exists right now between what we see as applicable for technology and what we see as what we cannot actually use apply technology to. We can create the Uber for this or the Uber for that or the Facebook for this, but I think a lot of people aren't thinking about all these underrepresented populations. For example, the elderly population. there really aren't apps out there that are designed specifically for the elderly people, especially people with Alzheimer's. And so I think it is, connecting the dots was something that I didn't, for me, it seemed, I think maybe as my perspective, also as a student and a kid who witnessed my grandmother on a daily basis, and can see kind of these different connections, I think. And it's probably also a generational thing of, I grew up around technology. I kind of know all of the ways that you can, connect technology to all these different things and how it's grown. So thinking about how do we connect the dots in ways that we haven't thought about before, that might not be what we think of as the most, profit earning, or the one that might be the most popular, but also where it's really needed and we might not know that we need it yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it's easy to think about, building the next Uber or the next food delivery company. And at the same time, there are so many people that can benefit from technology. And just because the developer community is mostly young people, or even, a certain demographic age group, and it's just harder for us to see beyond our own set of problems. So it's great that at a young age you are able to apply technology to this huge and needed problem of Alzheimer patients. And so I'm curious to kind of like understanding more on Emma as a student, right? How do you balance schoolwork and timeless?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been a challenge because, I'm in high school now, I'm a full-time student, I'm still staying in school and still working on this. I think a lot of the time I've been using kind of school vacation times and weekends to work on timeless. I think when I was developing the working prototype, I did it all within like one spring break of 2 weeks of all just coding. And so I think it's been a challenge definitely of balancing my time, especially as I've gotten older and the workload gets bigger. But I think that's why I'm so grateful for my team who are helping me, guiding me through the process and making sure I'm taking the right steps and learning the right way. And so I've been balancing my time kind of that way through the school time, and then taking my my school breaks to kind of charge ahead with timeless work.
Great. I'm sure your schedule is very packed. And what do you aspire to create in the future for Timeless? What's on the roadmap?
Right now, I think we've been mostly working on translating the app, because a lot of our user base we've actually found are international, especially in non-English speaking countries. So we really want to be able to hit those user bases, and making sure that everyone who needs the app has access to it. So we're working on getting those versions out there as well. If I'm able to raise the additional funding, I'm also working towards getting an Android version. Right now it's only on iOS, but I want to make sure that we can also reach Android users. And I think in general, also finding other ways to create something like Timeless for the elderly population at large. I think, Alzheimer's is one part of it, but we also have all these other people who could be benefiting from the technology and should benefit from technology universally, and aren't being they aren't being thought as an audience right now. And so I'm thinking about other ways that I can apply computer science and technology to those areas too.
That's amazing. And I think that's also one of the amazing thing about being a creator and like being creative is that once we start building something, we get inspired to build even more things. And it's just a snowball that keeps growing and growing. And it's more like a problem of choosing what we want to focus on right now. There's such a growing issue and growing problem that we can solve with technology. And let's see. Oh, I have a question that it just occurred to me that with Technovation and with Timeless, seems like Emma you're quite interested in like the medical application of like the technology application on medical field or like patients. Can you share a bit more about what drives your interest in that area?
Yeah, I think I've definitely been quite interested in kind of the intersection between computer science and healthcare. I think it's definitely something that is being kind of expanded upon a lot right now, especially with AI and machine learning. And I think it's one of the most powerful ways that computer science can be applied. and that can help, a lot of as many people as possible, and it's very scalable. Um, I think it's one of the more traditional, applications of computer science right now. And I'm definitely also thinking about, ways of applying computer science in less, STEM areas. For example, digital humanities. It's something that's emerging right now. But I think healthcare is an area that computer science can have a lot of impact in. I've just been very interested in kind of exploring what opportunities could be there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because healthcare is so crucial to everyone. At the same time, it's one of the like harder, like slower moving industries because of regulation, and starting with uh, chronic illness, it's probably something an area that can drive change more effectively in that area.
Mhm.
So I want to move to talking about kids and coding, and you've started learning coding from 6 years old, and some of the girls, or even generally like kids, think that they need to be good at math or science in order for them to learn how to code. What do you think of that?
I think that that kind of focuses on maybe the more computer science aspect of computer science, but I think technology at large definitely has a more creative side to it as well. It's not just about the technicality of creating an app, but also a broader picture of, how do you design an app so that it aesthetically looks good, but also is really easy to use. That's a very, creative aspect to it. And I think that that's something that I learned from just kind of exploring, not thinking necessarily about, what's the math behind this, or what's kind of the scientific explanation for why a loop works, but just can I explore and make something that, I envision something and I try to work towards that. There's definitely less of a mathematical sense to that and logical sense to that, and more exploration, artistic and creative way of looking at computer science. And so I think there's definitely an aspect of computer science that everyone can relate to and connect to. That's probably why technology has been so far reaching, because its applications are so widespread. So I think you don't necessarily have to be a math nerd, a science nerd in order to like computer science. There really is a lot of different ways you can look at it.
Totally. Um, what are some tips that you have for kids that want to start learning to code?
Yeah, I think not only looking at kind of the coding aspect of coding, computer science for the sake of computer science, but also kind of computer science for the sake of other fields. How can you apply computer science? What can you create with technology that can help someone that you know, or help your community, or help, people around the world? I think right now we've really gotten the hang of, how do we create technology and, have emerging technologies. I think the next wave is really thinking about how do we apply it, how do we create solutions that can benefit people who are perhaps underprivileged or not being impacted by technology right now, really making it universal and making it as effective a solution as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting also when you first started with Scratch, building animation and games. And how did you kind of like make the switch from, tinkering with project and then, okay, now I'm going to solve a real problem for real people and building an application? What was the transition point there?
I think it was definitely, Technovation really played a large role in that, because it was not only business oriented, but also kind of social good, social benefit, and social enterprise actually oriented. It's thinking about not only this is an app that you create with technology by programming it, it's also about, what's your audience and how do you market your app and how do you get that out there and how do you measure your success? But also, how is this going to help people? What is this a solution for a certain problem? What are you kind of targeting this towards? I think that really shifted my perspective in terms of what the impacts of technology was and what technology really means in the context of, the way that we live today on a day-to-day basis. And also kind of the social part of being a computer scientist and being a girl who's interested in technology, and really also being a young person. I think also in the process of creating Timeless, I realized that sometimes I'm the youngest person in the room. People don't really expect me to, be creating an app and trying to get something out, a product out there. I think there are a lot of kind of different shifts that have happened in my perspective through my experiences, whether that's the way I look at being a coder and a young girl who wants to pursue computer science, but also someone, I think, with a tool that can create a lot of good as well.
Great. Well, this is so that's all of my questions. And Emma, did you have anything else you want to share or add?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, right now with the coronavirus situation, I think this is really great. Kind of having more conversations about computer science and kind of keeping kids engaged as well. I mean, I hear that in Hong Kong, it's kind of leveling out a little bit. So I'm still doing online school, and so hoping everyone is still kind of maintaining engaged and kind of keeping all this computer science technology in the loop with that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, this school closure period actually has prompted a lot of students to start learning online. And I think that, there's definitely a lot of new changes that's going to happen in education as well. So, well, thank you so much, Emma, for joining this conversation today, this morning. How do we stay connected with you? I see you're active on Twitter as well.
Yeah, I have a website, emmayang.com. Timeless's website is timeless.care. And I'm on Twitter at emmayang78.
Perfect. Well, we'll leave the links down below in our video. And thank you again. And all the best with your journey.
Right, thank you so much.
Well, I'm so inspired by Emma's journey, especially about her passion in combining technology and healthcare. I think it's not easy for us to think about users outside of ourselves and also solve problems that are in patients or people that are less privileged and using technology to make their lives better. I really feel inspired by how she's growing her company, leveraging different stakeholders and people who can help with her products. I can't wait to see what she builds next, and I'll leave the links of Timeless app and her social media in the description box below. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!